Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and DarkDryDrew here. Today is Thursday, January the 10th, 2019. 4 p.m. in New York, 1 p.m. in Los Angeles, 9 p.m. in London, 8 a.m. in Sydney, Australia. But wherever you are in the world, listening either to the live stream or to the recorded podcast, thank you for tuning in once again to LOA Today, your daily dose of happy. And I'm glad to welcome back my youngest co-host, DarkDryDrew, who is, we have an interesting show here. Every show, of course, here on LOA Today is a different show because of all the different people who are involved. But this one's particularly different because with Drew, we try to get into issues that really young people are interested in much more than older people. And Drew, it's proven to be an interesting formula because, first of all, you're getting a lot of help out of it, but I'm kind of hopeful that other young people are kind of getting the same kind of benefit out of it. What do you think? Is that actually happening, or is that just my pipe dream?
That's a great question, man. I mean, that's always my goal, to help young people, to help. What would I have wished people had said to me when I was, even just a few years ago, and kind of trying to provide that for others,
Right.
I think that we hopefully, I think we reached that here and there.
Well, hopefully it's true. And this is a Q&A, so if you are tuned into the live stream, and I see people are coming into the audience here, if you're listening to the live stream and you have a question or a comment or a topic you want us to address directly, by all means, type it into the comments section, and we will be happy to do so, because that's part of the way LOA Today works. LOA Today is a little bit unique in that we have audience participation. You don't get that on too many podcasts. There are a few that do, but not too many where you get that. So we actually combine that with conversation on stage here, so to speak. And I don't know. I think it's a pretty winning combination. We're getting some very loyal listenership. I'll say that. Very loyal listenership. So let's see. What's that? Go ahead.
I would say it takes it from just watching, it's not people just watching us, but instead it's a big group conversation.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Well, yeah, not only is it a group conversation, but I find that when we're conversing here on camera, so to speak, there is also cross-conversation going on in the comments section, which I think is really good. And a lot of the I try to grab as much of the cross-commentary as I can to include in the conversation, because a lot of it's really good advice. So we have... most of our loyal listeners are, I would describe as intermediate to advanced LOA deliberate creators. And it's great because when you have that much expertise among your listenership, that's an educated audience. It keeps you on your toes, too. It definitely keeps you on your toes. But no, I think it's really good that way. So, well, let's see what's going on in your life that we can help you with. I mean, you said earlier that you're kind of trying to get your stuff together and so forth. Anything particularly you're looking at that is giving you pause or so? You said that you were giving a lot of thought to stuff that we talked about in the past, but what you been thinking about?
Gosh. Lately I've just been trying to get organized. And on a superficial level, it doesn't sound particularly interesting. But for me, I had to look back at my life across essentially the past 8 years in particular. So I'm at the point now where I'm if I went back to college, I don't think I could do it, having already been through it. It's one of those things where you really don't know what you're in for.
This is true. Yeah. Yeah, college is a bit of a surprise to everybody when they first arrive there, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So, kind of looking back on all of that and just figuring out that, I kind of thought I was organized, but I'm not very organized.
What do you mean by organized, though?
I guess not focused to some degree. I've got too many, I'm working on film projects, comedy projects, and YouTube channel, and, the list goes on to the point where there's 1,000 ideas, but nothing actually done most of the time. So trying to figure out how to realign everything so that now I'm, I at night now, instead of messing around, I read 1 to 2 hours before bed, and then that calms me down, and I stretch and meditate if I remember to. So realigning everything so that I wake up a little bit less terribly. The mornings are particularly bad for me.
Why are they bad?
I just like literally cannot wake up, and then all my stomach problems arise in the morning. So like all the bad things at once. So yeah, I've been researching chronotype, I think is what they call it, which is like everyone's body is built for a certain sleep schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And so mine, they're like, best thing you could do would be to go to bed at midnight, which is close to what I'm at 2 a.m. Trying to, realign stuff like that, like small things that kind of you begin to accept as just parts of life. Like, yeah, I go to bed late and I look and it's like, oh wow, I've been going to bed like randomly for like 8 years. I should probably fix that. And so kind of like noticing really, really small details in the everyday that are actually very large details in the grand scheme of your life.
I may be barking up the wrong tree, but I'm going to go with a little theory that I've got and see how well my theory plays out. Because whenever I hear somebody talking about trying to organize, trying to get their schedule together, trying to work out the details like you're talking about, I reflect back to my own experience doing exactly the same thing. And what I learned through years of doing that is that it's really that not that I'm disorganized. It's really not that I need to get the details ironed out. It's really that I don't know what my focus is, that I don't know what it is that is giving me joy and giving me excitement to get up in the morning. Because everything you described there is all focused on the idea of no idea. I mean, there's no... You understand what I mean? Like, there's no passion in any of that. There's nothing that says to me, wow, I can hardly wait to go do X, whatever X is. And whenever that X is lacking, that's when we start trying to dither around with schedules and organizing and trying to get everything, get all the ducks in a row and so forth. Because we really don't have a very clear idea of what it is we want out of life. We don't have a really clear idea of what it is that's driving our motor. And when you lack that, that is not a pleasant place to be in. More than that, it's kind of a trap. Because when you're in that trap, when you're in that place, it's like you can't ever get out of it. There's never any exit strategy. And the reason there's never an exit strategy is because there's no passion. There's nothing to say, yeah, I can hardly wait. Like, somebody else in the same age group as you, somebody who might be like a skier or a snowboarder or a surfer or something like that, they can't wait to get up. They can't wait to go live their day. The people who live on ski mountains and who live for the snow to fall can't wait for the next snowfall. And when it comes, man, they are out there. They are just doing all that stuff they love to do. You can't keep them away from it. Schedules, organizing it, that's the furthest thing from their minds, And that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing in you. I mean, you have interests, and we've talked about some of those interests, and they're good. You have some good interests, but I think what's really missing here is your passion. And there's nothing wrong with this. It just means you haven't found it yet. But you just haven't found that thing that says, "Yeah, let's go! I can hardly wait to get out there." Am I wrong?
It's hard to say. I guess in terms of career or work, yes. But I think that I'm getting closer and closer to realizing that, like, every aspect about filmmaking is what I like the most. Because with comedy, there's lots of fun parts, but a lot of it's kind of a slog. And that's kind of how most things feel. But with filmmaking, that was something where...
See, that's an interesting contrast right there. Because you talk about how much you love filmmaking, and then in the same sentence you describe it as a slog. And I know from experience, when someone kind of does that kind of juxtaposition, it means there's something about the way they're looking at this thing they supposedly love that is leading them to feel ho-hum about it. See what I mean? Because, I mean, they're professing their love. They're saying, I really love this. I think this stuff is great. And at the same moment, like one phrase later, they're saying, not directly, but indirectly, I'm feeling weighed down by all this. Well, that isn't the passion that we're talking about. That's like the...
was a bit of a slog.
So what's the other stuff?
The comparable hobbies. But filmmaking's the one where I actually do like every aspect about it, besides potentially working with other people. But that would be the one challenge. No, the other, like, comedy's the one where a lot of it's a slog.
Why is that? What is it about the comedy that is a slog? And by comedy, do you mean doing stand-up comedy, or do you mean building comedy into film?
Stand-up comedy.
Stand-up. Oh, okay. I get that.
You have to wait in venues for hours, and then you might not even perform.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at filmmaking, though, you said there really isn't anything of that you don't like. I'll kind of replace the word like with love. So there's nothing about that you don't love, except for people, where people are involved. Talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, and it's not even that. I've always been really introverted, and I've had to like become more social over time. Mm-hmm. But it's sort of, and I enjoy working with people when I have a good team. In fact, the team that I worked with most recently was like fantastic.
Oh, that's good.
They were all incredible.
Excellent.
But most of the time, it's hard to find that, and so it's sort of like with stand-up comedy or writing the screenplays, that's something I can do just me.
Right.
Like, if I fail, it's because of me.
Mm-hmm.
But with filmmaking, it's really hard to do without a crew. And,
right.
I mean, we've done it, and it's just that it makes, something that with the whole crew you could do in like 2 days, it takes, months to kind of like...
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
When you're doing it with two people.
Yeah, filmmaking is very rarely a solo occupation. It's usually, like you say, it's a team, and anybody can tell that. Just look at the credits of a movie, and you get a really good sense of how many people are involved in making a movie. So, yeah, it makes total sense. And you said you did have that one experience recently where the team was great to work with. Talk about that.
You could tell everyone wanted to be there, and that was kind of like. I think that's to some degree pretty rare that like everyone wants to be there. Mm-hmm. And so it's one of those things where we're pretty much all on the same page to the point where even when we would kind of come to like should we do this or this, that, it went pretty amicably, that everyone was able to kind of like come to a conclusion. So, yeah, I'd say, I guess, finding a filmmaking team.
One of the things that I've noticed by watching interviews on like television shows like Inside the Actors Studio or other comparable kinds of programs that delve into the back end of the world of theater and movies and so forth, is that the experiences that the people talk about the most favorably with the big smiles on their faces and so forth are the ones where they're able to collaborate in a really big way, and they feel free to be creative contributors, and the ideas are just flying, and the best idea wins, and let's just go for it, and everybody's just letting their creative juices flow, so to speak. Now, is that kind of what you're talking about?
Somewhat. I think in terms of brainstorming, like if there's a writer's room, that's the approach I'd use. But like if I were to be directing a film, and it was like the film that I had written, I would be open to all the suggestions. Mm-hmm. But to some degree, the goal of a director, as I see it, is to keep everything consistent, like tonally consistent, the way it's edited consistent, the music consistent. Because that's one of the problems, like with Hollywood, is where you'll have a lot of directors that their first film will be like an indie film, and it'll do well enough to get them into Hollywood. But then once they have tons of money, they no longer have to be creative because they can just pay for everything they want. Mm-hmm. And then a lot of their films start to suck. And it's like, how did you go from being so incredible on an $800,000 budget to like, now you've got millions of dollars, but nothing's good anymore?
Why do you think that is?
Part of it is, you just buy everything you want. But the other part is that the more crew you add, the more it kind of dilutes the final product. So that if everyone is inserting their own creative aspect to it, that's good unless it conflicts with the core vision.
Okay. So now I want to go back to your other statement, which was, I can't remember exactly how you said it, but the gist of it was you expressed a frustration when it came to working with other people on a film project. So with this kind of as a background, talk about that.
Oh, gosh. Sort of, well, the one project that I worked on where there was a bit of a challenge was in, like, the tonal differences. And I think by the end of it, we both agreed, like, okay, like, if it's your project, you'll do it. If it's my project, I'll do it. And everyone will help. And I think that was the big thing where it's like, it's like everyone's on the same page following whoever's in control's, vision.
Okay.
And so it's like you're allowed to be creative within these parameters. And so it's not so much of a full restriction as it is like, in fact, I would say that the restrictions force you to be more creative because you have less to work with. Kind of like, once again, with the budget, where the less you have to work with, the more creative you have to be. So oftentimes you'll create something better from a place of, like scarcity or, yeah. You know what I mean? Like, you're kind of forced into trying harder, I guess. And so that's where, like on the project we were on, people would be proposing new ideas, and it was like, okay, like I like that, or like maybe if we do this and that, and then kind of like aligning it to be like, okay, well, here's the vision of what we're going for, so how can you fit that in with the vision? And that seemed to work well.
Okay.
And I haven't worked on with a professional team, I guess. So.
Okay, all right. That's probably going to be part of what happens when you work with an amateur team, so that kind of makes sense. So now that we've gone into it a little bit more detailed, I wanted to get the details out there before I went back to the original topic, because the original topic was you wanting to get your life organized and all that, and my conjecture that means you kind of lost track of the passion. So here's my setup question that I've been saying for the last 15 minutes. Why or where is the passion? I mean, are you feeling passionate each day, getting up like, I want to go work on my film project, or what I want to find what the next film project is? I can hardly wait to get out there and do whatever film project is on my list right now.
Not yet. Getting there. I guess I should like add or clarify that in regards to organization, like I write everything on notes, and so I had all these like papers everywhere, and sort of no way to consolidate my tangible brain, I guess you could call it, which is like all the ideas that I've laid out. And so I needed to design a system to kind of consolidate that to like my to-do list and sort of all of that in like a way that, properly incentivizes it for me. So that's been my focus this week, was to like literally clear my mind and like sort of metaphorically clear my mind, so that now I feel comfortable to write film projects.
See, that's an interesting word you use. You said to incentivize it, to create the list, to incentivize it. Why incentivize? And because this is what I'm going at. To me, it sounds like if you're really excited about this, you don't need any incentive. And yet, here you are saying you need to have a list to create some incentive, and I don't quite understand why.
Well, the incentivizing one is more for, it's just more of a to-do list, or like a list of things I can choose from that either need to happen or that I'd like to happen. And then sort of, I've designed it like a video game where all of the things on the to-do list are quests that each have, experience points at the end of it, sort of just a different scale. So like one experience point if I like meal prep, or like 3 experience points if I like buy the memory foam mattress that I'm saving up for. So in that terms, it's more of like just a tangible way. So at the end of the month, I could be like, oh, like 70 experience points. Well, I did a lot this month. And so that's sort of like, I think it's the self validation that comes with that, which is something I've always had a problem with. So like you just like moving on to the next thing and pushing forward without ever like getting out of the car and stretching and looking around and being like, oh, this is where I drove to,
So basically,
but in terms of
using gamification, that's the current term for that. Gamification, game methodologies in order to kind of provide tracking for your life to give you the incentive to keep going with all the going after the little goals you have outside of filmmaking and basically go after the stuff that you want to go after. You're trying to create an incentive program for that.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
That's usually an indication. Whenever you have to create an incentive program, I mean, I say this kind of, I'm trying to say this as respectfully as I can, knowing how popular games are and how popular game theory is, because they're really, really popular right now. And the whole idea of using game theory as a way to kind of structure one's life or structure one's approach to a project or to a job is a very popular approach. But I still think there's something missing from that. And I'll go back to what I said before. The thing that's missing is passion. If you have passion for something, I'm telling you, you don't need to do lists. Because when you're passionate about something, you can't get through whatever the list would be fast enough. And when you can't get through fast enough, you don't have time to make the list because you by the time you got the list made, you're done. You've already finished all the tasks that are on it because you're so driven to do all this stuff because it's fun, it's passionate, it's interesting, it's driving you. So anytime I hear somebody talking about making a list, the first thought that goes through my mind is, where's their passion? Because the passion clearly isn't there if they're having to make lists. And I'm not saying there's no role for playing lists either. I mean, I've made lists too. But I don't have to sweat over it. If I have a list of things to do, I can make the list in 5 minutes. Even if it's not a list that I can get through today, I can still make it in 5 minutes. It doesn't take long as there's a passion going on, as long as there's a driving emotional desire to live in some way, to really live. It's only when that driving emotional desire is missing, that's when I find myself wanting to make lists. Because what I'm really trying to do is I'm kind of stumbling around trying to find my mojo.
Yeah, I guess that I agree with that. Stumbling around trying to
So
other part.
I would say instead of trying to find a list instead of trying to put lists together, why not delve a little bit deeper inside yourself and ask yourself, what is it that I want and what's standing in my way? Get to the root of it a little bit more. Because I'm telling you, once you unleash that passion, it's going to make it so much easier for you.
I actually was working on those questions.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. And I use lists and different, I use them because I think about too many different things that my memory is not as powerful as my ability to think about different things.
Yeah, I understand that too.
Like the lists are like the part of my brain that's outside of my body.
Okay.
So they're like a memory bank. But I wouldn't, with the film stuff, I don't really write lists for the film stuff. So I think the passion's there. I think it was more, I'd say for me it's been more that there's like this kind of like mental clutter and physical clutter in my room. But probably more so the physical clutter, I cleared out I purged like half of my stuff.
Good for you.
So that feels like, so now I have like I have a desk just for writing and a table just for board games. That's
very
like
good.
In my room.
Excellent.
The mental clutter is the one where it's like you're saying, figuring out what really matters. Because for me, I'll have 100 plans, but then it's like, well, welcome to reality, you choose 2. And so that's where I'm at. And I actually did write a bunch the other night, so I have been getting back into it. But sort of like you're saying, the finding the mojo part again, or like I think it's like everything else bogs me down, might be what it is. But there's like a lot of things that get in the way that I'm not, I guess, immediately able to perceive the size of the roadblock, if that makes sense. So that I might be like, oh my gosh, like I didn't realize it just took me 3 hours to do stuff in the kitchen because I'm not good at kitchen stuff, So now it's like, oh, if I don't have time to do this tonight, then I have to choose. And it sort of like bogs me down to where I don't write. But on the nights that I do write, so far it's only been 3 occasions, but they were all like, superb. But that was like 3 within several months.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And by writing, you mean
maybe
writing script, or do you mean writing your list? What kind of writing are you talking about?
The screenplay.
Screenplay. Okay. All right.
Yeah. I guess maybe it's the consistency of forcing myself to just sit down and see what happens.
But see, that's where I think you're off track. Right there. Because the moment you have to force yourself is the moment you're not relying on passion. You also made another comment that I thought was kind of interesting. You said something like, and I don't remember exactly what the wording was, you said you wanted to think out what was on your list. That's not exactly what you said, but that was the gist of it. And I'm thinking that means you're spending too much time in your head and not enough time in your heart. Because you really can't figure out a list, especially of things to do that are important to you. You have to feel that out. It has to be in here. It has to be in your chest. It has to be in the heart of who you are. That's where you have to look for it. So it's not about thinking it out at all, if you see what I mean. It's about feeling it out.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Right. So I might at least start. I mean, you can use the law of attraction for this, by the way. This is the perfect kind of law of attraction application to have. And I'm going to refer to what Abraham talks about when they describe the process of how when you focus on a thought and the feeling associated with that thought for, it used to be 17 seconds. My friend Louis is now telling me it's down to 14 seconds, so apparently it's all shrinking, which is probably a good thing. But if you hold on, let's go with 14 seconds. If you hold on to the thought for 14 seconds and you're focused on it and you're emotionally tying yourself up to it and so forth, feeling it out, after that 14 seconds, the law of attraction through source energy will send another thought of the similar kind to you. So in other words, you'll get the next thought in the sequence, in a sense. And then if you focus on that one for another 14 to 17 seconds, that will send you another thought. And if you still focus on that one for another 14 to 17 seconds, that will send you another thought. You do that 4 times, so somewhere between 56 and 68 seconds, around a minute. Then you'll start to manifest something physically by continuing to focus on that. So they're describing this process of how a thought leads to another thought, leads to another thought, leads to another thought, and eventually starts leading to manifestations that kind of harden into reality over time. That's the process as described by Abraham Hicks. Well, you can take advantage of that. I mean, if what you want to do is to come up with ideas from inside, and the word idea, we usually think of that as coming from the brain, but I'm talking about ideas that come from your internal connection with who you are, from your internal Drew, so to speak, your inner Drew. When you're trying to connect to those ideas, this is a great time to use the law of attraction. You start with your one first idea. It doesn't even have to be a core idea, just this one idea. It can be a request. Like, I want to identify what it is that's going to make me feel really passionate right now. That could be your question. Or it could be, what is it that I really want to focus on? Or, however you want to structure the question, you focus on that for 14 to 17 seconds and see what comes to you. And then once something comes to you that you can see has some kind of connection, even if you can't tell where it's going, you focus on that for another 14 to 17 seconds. And you keep doing this process of just letting the idea come to you by focusing on the one that just came. You see what I mean?
Yeah. No, I when looking back, I had a moment like that recently where it was like a manic 45 minutes of that.
Yeah. Manic is a good word, isn't it? Because it starts to build, doesn't it? You can feel the emotion of it build. Yeah. That's one of the things that's really big about this process. We talk a lot about how important it is to focus on the feeling along with the thought. But it's really true that when we do this thought after thought after thought process where it's all coming intuitively, all coming inside of ourselves, the more we focus on it, the more the emotion builds throughout that minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 45 minutes, as you said. It just starts to build and build and build and build. And now that's where passion comes from. Passion comes from like this overwhelming emotional attachment to whatever it is we're talking about. Right? So I would take advantage of that if I were you. Don't worry about trying to make lists. Focus on developing your trains of thought. Your trains of, and by thought, I don't mean thought up in the brain. I mean the thought coming from inside, from your heart, from who you really are deep down inside. Work on getting that going. Don't worry about the lists. Lists, I swear, once you get that going, you'll find that lists will be the smallest task of your day. It really will be. It will not take a lot of time. The only thing that's holding you back is here, the heart. That's the only thing that's holding you back right now.
Yeah, that's my personality type to some degree.
Well, it's also your choices. I mean, I don't mean this in a critical way. I mean, this is what we all do. We choose our thought patterns. We don't necessarily do it all with deliberate intent. Sometimes we just do it by default, by whatever's coming along. But we're still choosing them. Like, yes, there's my other thought. Yep, I say that's my thought. So we're choosing them. All we're really talking about here is deciding to choose them differently, making different selections, and making them based on what's going on down here.
Yeah, I'll have to work on that. Been one of the big life challenges has been reconnecting my brain to my heart.
Good news is that it's already connected. I mean, really, all you're trying to do is not reconnect it. All you're really trying to do is to notice the activation, to notice that it's already there. What we tend to do very often as human beings is we try to keep all of our activity up here. But that's a choice. And if we let go of that choice, say, well, I've got to figure this out. If we let go of that, if we let go of I've got to reason this out, I've got to logically, string this together, leave that part out of the conversation, the heart comes right into it. You don't really have to work it. It's just letting go of that logical process. That logical process is what slows us down.
Huh. That basically conflicts with my entire existence.
Why is that?
Trying to work on. That's just the way my brain works, and I've looked into it with psychology tests and stuff, but my brain completely functions on logic and being rational, although you could argue that being rational is subjective, but sort of that for my personality type, people like this, the brain will use logic to block out emotions, and so it's been sort of a gradual process of recognizing that I even have, because when I was a kid,
you just
described my mom was like,
yeah,
huh?
You just described it beautifully. It's exactly what happens. The logic blocks out the emotions.
Yeah, and my mom's worked on that with me since I was a kid. So right now, when I was a kid, I had no emotions, and they thought I had no soul. That's what she said. She's like, when you were a kid, we thought you had no soul.
Oh no.
And so come a long way.
Well, good. So I'm glad you made the progress.
Yeah.
The thing that I have learned, and I was in many ways self-trained along the lines of what you're talking about. Self-trained, and I was trained by my society too, to be a very logical person. I was very logical, very rational. And it did not serve me. So over time I had to unlearn that in a sense. What I found made the most difference was getting out into the world just to enjoy whatever I can find in the world that I enjoy. Like for me, one of my first things to discover was I love nature. Not as an ecologist, not as somebody trying to save the earth or something like that. I just love being out in nature. I like the colors. Yeah. I like the smells. I especially like it. My favorite kind of day is a day in the upper 60s, lower 70s, blue sky, sunny, little puffy white clouds, mostly blue sky, spring scents in the air, animals running all over the place, color everywhere. Just color, brilliant color everywhere. I mean, a spring day is like my favorite day of the year. And on those days when I have that, I'm in heaven. I mean, just taking a walk in that, for me, is like the best thing in the world. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be that for you necessarily. I'm simply describing to you that I found just some mundane, simple, plain, everyday activity, going out for a walk in nature. I found that fed my soul. It fed me emotionally. It helped me bring my emotions out. So if I were you, I'd be focusing on trying to find more stuff like that. Stuff that sings your song, that resonates with you inside. And because that's how you're going to get those emotions out. You can't reason them out. You can't logic them out. It doesn't work. You have to actively tap into emotions on a regular basis, or a more regular basis, let's put it that way, if you want to incorporate them into your daily process. So that's where I would start if I were you. I would be sitting down trying to make lists. I'd be getting out into the world and doing whatever your X, Y, and Z are that you find helps you to stimulate your own emotional attachment better.
Okay. Yeah, I like that.
I mean, what floats your boat emotionally? What kind of stuff really just gets you going? It makes you feel good. Makes you feel like you're alive.
I mean, definitely nature, like you're saying. And I have, lately I've been taking Mimi outside in the mornings and just seeing what she does.
Yeah.
And then, reading, I've been trying to get into reading more, just putting it into my schedule and really immersing myself in different books and different experiences.
What do you love about reading?
That's a great question. I wish I knew how to answer that. Maybe, reading's, for me, I want to be a film director, so it's basically I get to direct the book in my head. And
really?
Then, that's my experience of it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's, when I'm reading it, I'm visualizing it and, translating that into a visual narrative, I guess.
That jazzes you, that makes you feel good? That activity?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, strategy, strategy board games, card games, video games, I'm reading Clausewitz's Principles of War. Anything that involves, really complex stuff.
So you like that kind of thing. You like that strategizing aspect.
Yeah, in the right context.
Right.
I did math, all of college, and I didn't enjoy math, but that's because it was in economics or something. But I think that if it was, applied to something I was interested in, that I probably would enjoy it more. But not that would be my fun or passion, really.
No, it doesn't necessarily have to be your passion. What it has to be is enjoyable. It has to be something that connects to you emotionally and helps you feel more alive in a sense. And that's what you've identified. You've identified three things: getting out into nature, reading, and playing strategy games. There's three different ways that you now know consciously you can use to effectively feed your soul, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I would do if I were you. I'd be looking for ways to spend more time doing those things and doing them passionately, doing them, throwing yourself into them and getting really excited as you're doing them. Saying, yes, I'm going to do this exciting thing that I love doing so much. In fact, you might even get overexcited, especially when you're starting, you get out on a nature walk or something. Throw your arms in the air and say, yes, I'm out on a nature walk. Build it up a little bit. Milk it. Juice it. Give it some extra flavor. And then as you're doing, whether it's a nature walk or the reading or the strategy games or whatever, as you're doing whatever that activity is, turn up the volume. Accelerate it. Turn up the volume. Make it louder. Make it brighter. Make it more powerful in your mind. Because that's how you're going to build that connection. Or it isn't even build it. It's re-energize it. You're going to re-energize that connection to your heart much faster that way than any other way I know of.
Okay.
And
I really like that, yeah.
And when you do that, you're going to find lists go right out the window. They're just not even going to be important anymore.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess, yeah, I think, I'm not sure what it was. Because for a while I was doing pretty well. I think probably college ruined everything. The factory reset, where I'm oh my gosh, I have to restructure my mind.
By the way, I want to remind our listeners, this is Drew and I are basically talking about stuff to help him along, but this is also a Q&A. So if you're listening to the live stream, by all means, if you have any comments or questions, share them, and we'll be happy to include them in what we're talking about here. But because I've seen a couple of people saying hello, and I want to say hello back. Hello, Sarah. Hello, Brahman. But other than that, I haven't seen a whole lot. So we'll incorporate you once you include some comments. Until then, we're just going to keep talking, trying to help Drew out a little bit. So that's my little promo for people who are listening to the live stream. And I also want to make my announcement. I realized I've been missing this the last couple podcasts, but I try to get in every podcast the idea that we want people to become subscribers to the podcast. And hopefully most of you are subscribers. If you're not yet a subscriber, please become one, because then you get all the episodes coming right to your smartphone. The instructions on how to do it are found in most of the places where this live stream or podcast recording are stored in the description. If you don't see the links there for becoming a subscriber, just go to the homepage of our website, loatoday.net, and you'll just find the links right there for Android users or for Apple iPhone users or iPad users, and just follow the steps like a regular wizard and click, click, click. It'll just walk you right through it. And also, please share the fact that you're listening to LOA Today with people who you think might be interested in this, and comment and like and so forth. That'll help other people find it as well, because we're trying to get more and more people out there to get their daily dose of happy. And so now I've done it. I've done my due diligence, Drew. I've gotten my word out there for the day. The announcements are made. What I need is to have somebody like you make a film about it. That's what it is.
Yeah, that's. Let me make all the films that I've written first, and then.
Oh, okay.
I'll put it on the list.
It's on the list. Okay, all right, yeah. We'll back burner it. That's fine.
That's just it. There's so many things.
But I really do strongly recommend that you focus on that emotional stuff, the stuff that makes your life sing, the stuff that makes you wake up. I mean, you were describing how waking up is really tough for you. Getting up, your stomach's all churning, your guts are all churning. It doesn't sound like a very pleasant experience in the morning. And I'm telling you, if you focus a lot more on what floats your boat, on the stuff that just fuels you, you're going to find that happens a lot less often too. In fact, if you can focus consistently on things like nature, on the book reading, on the strategy games and so forth, if you can focus more on that and do at least one of those things every single day, you will get to the point where you no longer have any mornings where you're waking up with your guts churning, because you'll be rediscovering your purpose. You'll be rediscovering what fuels your life. Once you know what fuels your life, it's easy to get up. I mean, it reminds me of a story of my wife. My wife, about when did she start? She started about I want to say 10 years ago. She was into doing what they call trash or treasure. She would go to yard sales and tag sales in the area every Saturday morning and find stuff to buy that she would either use as a foundational piece to build something else to sell, something, some sort of an improved thing, or she'd just turn around and do a resale of it. But she just loved getting out there and finding stuff. And the funny thing is, Louise, most of the time, has never been much of an early morning person. I mean, she was the kind of person who would prefer to sleep in late. When she did get up, she'd be dragging around. Except when Saturday morning came. Saturday morning, 5:30, boom, she was up by 6. She was out the door. See you in about 8 hours, and that was it. I never saw her for until late in the afternoon, and then she came back, and her car was jammed to the gills with all this stuff that she'd found at tag sales that she loved so much. She was so jazzed that there was nothing that was going to stop her. She was just living life whenever she would do that. That's the kind of thing that I think will happen to you.
That's funny you mentioned that, because I'm actually super into garage sailing, and I've never really considered it. Yeah, that's the only time I can actually get up in the morning.
Right?
I'm like, do it. This is,
So you know what I mean. Brilliant. Yeah. You know what that feels like.
Okay. I know that. Okay, that's good. Now I know what the feeling's like, now to provide that.
Exactly.
Maybe that's it, is I never do. I have this, for some reason, I think that work should be done in the morning, but maybe I just need to do fun things in the morning and the night and the day.
I wouldn't even worry about the schedule. I really wouldn't, because I know what that's like. And when the moment that you're worried about what the schedule should be is the moment you're focused on the wrong thing. What you need to focus on is where are the things to do, the things to experience that light you up. That's what you want to look for. And yes, I know you can't do that all day long. We all have responsibilities, things we have to do at various times.
Yeah.
But you don't have to pre-schedule that. You already know when you're going to have to do that stuff anyway. So don't worry about scheduling it. Just look for all the opportunities you can in a day to sample one or more of the things that light you up. Just do that. Just that's your whole responsibility. Just to look for what makes you tick. What makes you feel good? We live in a feeling universe. That was the big insight that I had when I first learned, actually shortly after I first learned about the law of attraction. We don't live in a logical universe. I thought we did. For the longest time, for years, I thought we lived in a logical universe. In a universe of rationality. Almost a mechanistic universe. But not even close. And indeed, when I tried to play out my life along those lines, I was invariably disappointed because it turns out life isn't logical. Life isn't rational. Life doesn't play out that way. It just doesn't. I mean, you know that from the subject matter of what you love for films and music and so forth. Your love deals with topics that are all about things going wrong. I mean, that's like the big theme that goes on with these genres that you like so much. Things going wrong. So clearly the universe doesn't work rationally. It doesn't work logically. That leaves only one possibility.
I have thought about that a lot because I always thought I was rational and logical, but then when you actually think about it, it just depends on what the parameters are. Because, I'll give you an example. When I was a kid, like a young kid, I didn't understand empathy because my brain was just purely logical. Even I've always been that way too. I'd rather know the truth if it was terrible rather than, to feel better. Or I'll make a decision based on what's logical rather than if it's even if it's an emotionally tough one or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But as a kid, my mom was like, "Oh, I'm going to bring cookies to the neighbor's kid." And I'm like, "But why would you do that? That's just us spending money to lose cookies." And she's like, "Well, he doesn't have a dad and his life's a lot harder." And that, as a kid, I didn't understand that. Emotions didn't mean anything to me. And so that wasn't factored into my perception of what's a rational decision. But as I got older and developed a sense of empathy, and when it finally clicked, it was you have to factor empathy into rational decisions.
And I suspect part of her answer, she probably said what you said, but it was probably also, well, it's a nice thing to do because I want to give them cookies. I want to give him cookies because he'll like them. I will enjoy the fact that he will like them. That was another reason to give the cookies. It was just because it felt good. It felt good to give the cookies.
Yeah. Which is a rational decision.
It's both, actually. It's emotional and it's rational. It's both.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's what I realized was that all rational decisions are subjective and they're limited to the kind of just the parameters that you set, and that what you think is rational.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I totally agree. Nothing's actually very rational, and it helps for economic decisions and stuff like that. But outside of that, not always that useful.
And even with economic decisions are very rarely rational. Believe it or not. And all purchase decisions are not rational. All of them are emotional in their primary foundation. I'll tell you a story that illustrates it. This is actually a classic sales story. Guy goes into a car dealership. He has a family, and he needs to get a car for his family. He goes into the car dealership, and you know how in the showroom they have 2 or 3 model cars to show you what their best sellers are and so forth.
Yeah.
He sees an SUV, and he can just tell it's very likely exactly what his family needs. But he also sees a red sports car. They're both on the showroom floor. And he's really drawn to that red sports car. And he goes over and he's looking at that sports car, and he's loving it. I mean, his eyes are just drinking it in. Because he can imagine himself, out on the highway, the top down, hair flying, all that kind of stuff. He was just dreaming about how wonderful it would be to be driving that sports car. And the salesman sees his look on his face and says, "Hey, come on, thanks for coming in. Can I help you?" And the guy says, "Oh, no, that's all right. I was just kind of looking." He says, "Oh, no, I saw that look. You love that car, don't you?" The guy says, "Yeah, I do like that car." And the salesman starts walking through the steps of trying to get him to buy the car. Well, after a long conversation, the guy ends up buying the SUV. Despite the fact that he loved that car, that convertible so much, he ended up buying the SUV. And most people would say he made that decision on a rational basis because his family needed a car, and a red convertible would not be a practical car for his family. His family needed room for all the kids to be sitting in the car in the back, his wife in the passenger seat, him in the driver's seat. They need to have room in the back for storing stuff if they're toting stuff around. They need to have all these different features that an SUV provides for them. So most people say that's a rational decision, right?
Yeah.
No, it's not. You know why he bought that SUV? He bought it because he loved his family. It was a love decision. It wasn't a rational decision.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think I could definitely...
See, that's the way we make economic choices. That's the way we make purchase choices. We emotionally attach to a reason, and then we rationalize it to justify our choice. So he emotionally knew he wanted to buy that car for his family, and then he rationalized it by pointing to all the different features that would make that a good decision. That's how we buy things.
That's very interesting. Yeah, young Drew would not have understood that. Now I get it. Yeah.
So really, emotion drives everything in our lives. We know that that's part of LOA theory, but it's also just part of how life works. Emotion drives everything. Emotion is behind everything. Emotion is what makes all of life worthwhile. Emotion is where all of the flavor comes from. It's where the spice comes from. Because we get emotionally attached to doing all this cool stuff, buying these things or doing these things or having these careers or having these relationships or whatever it might be. The emotion drives all of it. That's why I'm saying spend more time playing to your emotions. Spend more time on the stuff that you know creates an emotional response inside yourself. And when you do, the law of attraction takes over. And it ends up delivering to you more and more ideas about things that you would love, that you enjoy, that you like, and actually starts filling in gaps on things that you've already said, yes, I like that, but I'm not sure how to get there or how to attract it or how to make that into a career or whatever it is. It fills in the gaps for you because you're tapped into the emotion.
Okay. Yeah, I like that a lot.
Does that confuse you at all?
Yeah. Huh?
Does that confuse you at all?
No, I had to write it down. I wrote down I've got like 2 pages of notes from
okay.
Talk. I think that it's interesting because it feels like by the end of each talk, I come to some revelation through, what you're saying, and then it's like building blocks to see where I was at before the podcast, and then, now, before we started even doing them, and now I think it's, yeah. So,
and by the way, I got to take a second here. I got to take a second for a personal reason because I see somebody has checked into the live stream audience who was a friend of mine when I was a teenager. Gary just popped in and said, "Good to see you." Hey, Gary, it's good to see you too. Gary and I reconnected for the first time after many, many years back when Louise and I were still living in Virginia, and it was quite the amazing thing. But wow. I mean, we haven't talked in a while, so Gary, we'll have to have a conversation soon. But it's so good to see your name appearing in the list there. So just wanted to give a little personal message there. Thanks for dropping by, guy. Good to see you. See, that's the kind of thing. That's what life's all about, right, Drew? The stuff that makes you feel good.
Yeah.
The stuff that makes you feel good inside.
Yeah, that's true. That's what I need to figure out, I guess.
No, you don't figure it out. You feel it. You don't figure it out. You don't figure it. Figuring is not the way to go. Feeling it. You try to do everything that helps you to feel. Anything that helps you to feel. Gary and I we were musicians together. We would play musically, and I mean that's all about feel. That's all about the emotion that's attached to it. And we had a lot of good fun doing that. That was like one of the best ways that I had when I was at that age to get my emotions out. Well, you got to do the same kinds of things with the stuff that you love. You just got to spend more and more time doing that stuff. Gary, let me tell you about him. I mean, he went. I learned about this afterward because we lost touch after high school. But he went through one step after another doing these things that he loved. He had a whole series of things that he did that he really, really loved, and it created a wonderful life for him just because he followed his heart.
That's a good example then.
Yeah.
I think that's gosh. Yeah, I think that's what I definitely needed to hear and get the guidance on. So I'm glad that, I'll feel it out.
Absolutely. Feel it out. Go for the feel. Go for the stuff that makes you say, yes, I can hardly wait to get up this morning. Because you already know that. I mean, you already identified that you had the same passion that Louise had. You've experienced that through the doing the garage sales and the tag sales and so forth. You know what that's like.
Yeah.
So you know the feeling. You know the one that you're going for. You're trying to find anything that leads you to that feeling.
Okay. Yeah. Gosh.
So actually, we can simplify. You said at the beginning of this that you were going to try to get organized and get your list created and so forth. Let's create your very, very short to-do list. What's your first to-do item? What's your very first to-do item on the first thing that's on your list that you can think of that will create an emotional response? What's the first thing you want to do?
Probably read.
Okay.
Yeah, finish the book that I've been reading.
And you can do it now with some enthusiasm, because now you have a good reason to do it, right? Now you have a reason to say, okay, I can justify this. I've got a reason. I'm okay. Now you can just follow your passion. You've gotten past the reason part.
Okay.
Right?
Because the reason is just knowing that it'll be good for you.
It feels good. It feels good. It's all about how it feels. Follow your heart. What Joseph Campbell, the theologian / psychologist, wrote. He wrote, "Follow your bliss." Following your bliss is life. That's life with the cherry on top. Following what just makes you feel absolutely joyful.
I like that a lot. Yeah. Who said that?
Joseph Campbell. Wrote a number of really interesting books. Theologically related, but also touching on psychology in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
My mind functions in advice and in quotes a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of as a sort of a baseline or like a support structure. Like fortune favors the bold. That one's helped me a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Always like different.
Well, I'd put this one at your top of your list. Follow your bliss. It's the most important one. Actually, even Abraham Hicks has cited that one. They've cited that as what they think is the best description of how to live your life as the happiest life you can live. Follow your bliss. With that in mind, we're nearing the end of our hour, but I hope it's been helpful for not only for you, but also for our listeners. And you'll have to give us a report next week about what you were doing to follow your bliss this week.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think that was the guidance I need.
All right, good. Well, thank you very much. Thank you to everyone who tuned in, and we will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
See ya.